When making art, you don't always know what you're going to get. Or at least when I'm making art. Hi, my name is Em, and I am a full-time professional artist in San Francisco. And in this video, I want to take you through my entire process, start to finish, from very first sketches and experiments all the way through to the show in which these pieces were seen. And in the middle of all of that, I'm going to show you a great big failure that I had and why it was okay. Because sometimes practicing art, practicing anything, even if you're practicing community skills or maybe you're practicing revolution, you don't always know what the practice will turn out to look like. And you don't always know where the good and the bad steps are going to be in the middle of all that. So let's go through this process and I'll talk about it a little bit more. I make art with trash. Maybe you've seen one of my previous videos talking about this, but the gist is reclaimed lives through reclaimed materials. I use trash to highlight and practice how to, make things with that which we discard, whether that's cardboard or plastic or people. Yeah. Lots of people are feeling very discarded right now. And those are the people that I make my art for. So instead of buying art materials, I just scrounged through what I had in my little dragon's hoard of materials that I've collected over the years. And I started just by pinning giant sheets of cardboard to the wall and using some chalk pastels to scribble all over them. I was sort of beginning a relationship with understanding how the material worked, how cardboard functioned on the wall, what I liked, what I didn't like. So a lot of these first experiments were just about touching, drawing things, touching things, learning how the material worked. And because I didn't have a preconceived notion in my mind about what this was, air quotes here, supposed to be or supposed to look like, I was allowed to just figure out what was present. What did the chalk look like? How did the cardboard move? What kind of colors worked on top of this cardboard brown? And when you're doing other kinds of practicing, whether that's you're practicing community organizing or you're practicing boycotts or you're practicing, curating your information sources so that you're not 100% beholden to the algorithmic delivery services, sometimes it can feel like, oh, well, I'm not really getting anywhere. I'm not really doing anything because I'm just messing around with trying to figure out what this is. Sometimes there's a feeling of frustration, especially in community organizing. I think especially right now with people, many people jumping into organizing for their first time. We don't realize the level of directedness where I need to get a very specific thing done right now can actually impede your progress as an organizer or as an artist. So this is part of the process is very mess piled, right? None of the marks you're seeing now will end up in the finished work in the gallery. Literally zero. I do end up trying a little sculptural experiment in here, but once I had all of this mark making done and I had really filled up as much of the cardboard as possible, I started realizing, it can be above me. So that was one of the first experiments that happened after this mark making was I started putting the cardboard on the ceiling because I had nowhere else to put it. I'm just working in my living room here. And so, you can see the walls get very cramped with these huge pieces of cardboard very quickly. So where else could I go but up? I also discovered that the cardboard really wants to be not flat, despite being a manufactured flat object. For the most part, cardboard has creases and cuts, and especially cardboard that's post-consumer or post-moving or been used in the mail. That cardboard already has lots of expectations in it. So that's when I was like, oh, well, why don't we just make it back into boxes? So I busted out this industrial heavy duty, I don't think it's industrial, heavy duty stapler. A stapler specifically meant for cardboard, and just started messing around with what shapes could be made. What if I stapled bits of paper onto it? Would it hold itself up? What different conglomerations could I make? And then I took those conglomerations to Golden Gate Park. We are currently outside of, what is that museum called? Oh, the De Young, where, previously things had been pulled down. Certain sculptures had been forcibly removed by the public, but these plinths were left. So I was like, well, can we use the cardboard to sort of make an outfit or a sheath for these plinths? And so this was a very failed experiment. If you've never been to San Francisco, it's very windy here. And I was working with very light material. And despite the fact that it was a sunny summer day, my stuff kept blowing away. So I brought all of this cardboard that I had drawn on and played with, and I wrapped it around this thing, and I played with how the stapler could help me construct this outfit around the plinth, and it fully didn't work. This is not my first street art piece. I have done street art before using paper on lamp posts and power line posts. And you can see in the images, it's not terrible. It's an interesting intervention for a street art piece. But it was so flimsy. It could barely hold itself up. And yeah, I left it there. It was immediately removed a day later, which was totally fine. But yeah, it was not, it didn't feel satisfying. It didn't feel like what I was supposed to be doing with this material. But I went back home. I got more cardboard. I had my stapler. And so I started a new process where instead of making those boxy shapes, or instead of starting with the sort of surface marks and then building shapes out of them, I just built the shapes from scratch. So now I'm basically tearing little pieces of cardboard, maybe the size of my palm or smaller, and then shaping them into cones using flat pieces, and then reconstructing these sort of landscapes out of them. And I started calling these the emotion models. As a person with alexithymia, which it means essentially is a kind of emotion blindness, where often I have no idea what I'm feeling, even down to if I'm hungry or not is a very difficult thing for me to know. So I was trying here to construct surfaces that I could consider maps or landscapes of emotions. And these are my first few. Big, almost cardboard smears on the wall with these big lumps growing out of them. I loved the texture so much. I love how these are textured. And they are huge. These take up most of one of the walls in my living room. And they felt very much closer to my goal. So we were talking before about like, oh, if I don't have a goal in mind ahead of time, how do I know if I'm reaching it? And I did not have these shapes in mind at the beginning. All I had in mind was, I have a lot of cardboard around. I should use it to make art. I should explore how it works, what I can make with it. And because the goal was about the process and not the product, I'm much freer to be like, well, that first experiment in street art was a bit of a flimsy failure, my friends, but I can come back to that same process with the same goal. And it's the same when you're working community. It's the same when you're making music. Like, if your goal is a very specific product, the distance between where you currently are and that product can feel very frustrating. Maybe you're trying to organize a protest. Maybe you're trying to write a book. Maybe you're trying to make a sort of specific kind of project. You're making a specific kind of sculpture. And the idea in your head can impede the eventual product. You can get so attached to what you thought it was supposed to look like, what the protest and the book and the music and the sculpture were supposed to look like, that you miss what is available with your current resources. So here I'm just going in with some leftover paint from a project a few years ago. Again, the Dragon Hoard of art materials. I collect them all and never throw them away. I got to just, play with the brush I already had, play with materials I already had, and just be like, okay, well, if mark making with the chalk pastels was not as satisfying as I would have liked, maybe paint will work better. And it worked so much better. It gave the surface a sort of integrated feeling, I guess. Instead of like marks on top of cardboard, the paint transformed these sculptures into something where they had continuous identities across like the whole form. And I played a lot with how I could combine the different colors and different kinds of brush strokes and dry brushing and doing fine lining. And I used a lot of different like paint paint techniques on these to get them really feeling whole and integrated. And then that painting process led me back to the sculpting process. So once I had a few of them painted, I got to go back and be like, okay, I sort of understand a little bit more about this process. Let's go back and see what other kinds of shapes I could make. So I started making much deeper valleys, much higher peaks, things with sort of like long tendrils and lumps and caves and all kinds of like different ways that the cardboard could be shaped. And then I also started installing them in these collages, I guess, together, where instead of any individual sculpture being alone, they would sort of line up together and lean on each other. And I'm just using a rubber mallet to pin them to the wall with push pins. I hung them on the walls, I hung them on the ceiling, and then I went back to painting, I went back to sculpting, and then I discovered these sort of honeycomb texture pieces of cardboard in one of our, a box that had been shipped. So I got to really see how dedication to the process over dedication to the outcome led me down all of these different pathways I would not have found otherwise. One of my favorite things about this part of the process, these paintings and this honeycomb texture, was figuring out how to paint the inside of these honeycombs. And I eventually just started using my fingers, just like poking my fingers inside of these holes because I couldn't figure out another way to really get the insides to be effectively painted. Turns out fingies are great. And I know I mentioned earlier not knowing what my work would look like at the beginning, but I also don't know what it means at the beginning. This art process is about discovery. I'm discovering something through the process of making the sculptures, and through the sculpting and the painting and the collaging together the different shapes in the installation, I was able to discover that I was making work about emotions, making 3D models of emotions, 3D models that let me sort of make an emotion, step back from it, and sort of examine it a little bit from a distance, the way that a word is supposed to help you, like the word angry or sad or hungry. They're supposed to help you have distance from the physical sensation of that emotion. But the words don't serve me that well, and these models serve me much better. But I didn't know that going in. I knew none of what I was going to discover going in. And that's why this sort of like improvisational practice is like so important to art making. Especially art making and artists who are invested in creating new knowledge and discovering things and treating art as a microscope, as a means for understanding and communicating with the world. This kind of making without a plan and practicing being able to make things from nothing feels very similar to the concept of deep listening in improvisational music. I'm going to read you a section from Art as Social Practice, Technologies for Change. And this time we're reading Chapter 17, Community Building Through Collaboration by Sarah Ruth Alexander. Listen to everything until it belongs together, and you are part of it. This concept feeds my own approach to improvisational music making and community building. Improv is a conversation where participants listen to one another and then compose a response, while at the same time leaving space for each player to speak and feel heard. In this way, improv can impart skills that participants can employ in their regular lives, finding a way to communicate with people with vastly different backgrounds and to make them feel sincerely heard. Deep listening also instills an appreciation of silence, which is seen as a form of meditation. One's attention is directed to the interplay of sounds and silence, or what is known as the sound-silence continuum. Because of my own deep listening practice, I am no longer uncomfortable with silence. I am no longer feel compelled to fill silent spaces or feel non-productive if not filling silent spaces. In fact, being aware of silence and the space it creates can be used to amplify capitalist urges that demand constant production. I want to read that last part one more time. In fact, being aware of silence and the space it creates can be used to amplify capitalistic urges that demand constant production. I'm just now realizing that I think this is why my brain is so deeply obsessed with Dimension 20 and has a very hard time watching scripted content, movies, television shows. Like I have a very hard time with scripted entertainment. And I think this is part of why, because improvised storytelling feels more akin to the skills of real life than watching people act and perform scripted lines do. Hello, good morning. This is the fit for dropping off all of the sculptures at Ruth's Table for the show, except for the 2 that are currently being hosted, which I will get on Tuesday and drop off. I was feeling super nervous about this before, but now that it's like the day, I'm fine. I think it was just like anticipation anxiety. So, look at this cute outfit though. Look at Clown Butch. That's where we're going. That's Clown Butch. Is that how, do we feel good about that? Yeah? I don't know. Oh, with the sunglasses? Oh my gosh, the process of getting the show was so hilariously convoluted. Um, I don't normally show in galleries. Not that I never do it. I have shown in, large places. I've shown in the Smithsonian. I've shown in, the international, or not international, the German Museum of the Body. I've been in lots of shows. I've shown lots of places, but I don't actually show like in local San Francisco galleries that much. It is something I'm trying to change and rectify now. But my little autistic brain is actually not great at networking. I don't know if that is a surprise to anyone. It probably shouldn't be. So because of that, I have really struggled with maintaining, building, sort of professional art connections in the Bay Area. So in order to rebuild that, I've been applying for grants, and I did get a grant last year from the Wattis Family Foundation, and that really helped me show work in people's homes. One of the goals of this project, and a project I'll make another video about it, but it's called Art Museum from Bed. And the goal of that project is just to put art in the homes of disabled people who don't have access to museums or galleries or public art due to, mobility or body size or energy level or kids or like tons of reasons. Just like it's very expensive to have contemporary art in your home, so let's give you free art that you can borrow as though it was from a library. I'm actually doing an event in March where people are going to be able to come to a gallery and just take pieces home with them. Not these pieces, but other pieces I'll show in another video. So I was planning on just showing these pieces in homes, but because of this grant, they really wanted there to be a gallery exhibition. It was like important to them, so I was like, okay. And a gallery had recently reached out to me, Reese Table Gallery in the Mission, and they were just like, hey, you want to work together? Do you want to like do a thing? And I was like, oh, sure. I'll do a thing. So this is the process of me like packing up, getting all the pieces in my tiny little car. I had to do 2 trips. And getting everything to the gallery and getting it all to their installer. And the gallery had their own installer, so I did not install this work at the gallery. So the actual configuration of the way the pieces went up was the first time that I had work just like arranged by another person. So the curator and the installer at Roost Table got to really participate in the exhibition of this work where it's not just a painting that you hang on a wall, but it's like a bunch of components that you can combine in like, a nearly infinite different ways, however you would like to show them. And they actually discovered a thing which I hadn't even thought about, which is that 3 of the pieces that I made for the exhibition have L-shaped backs, meaning that they fit in the corner between a wall and the ceiling. And, I was expecting them to put those pieces between the wall and the ceiling, but they didn't. They put them in the corner between 2 walls, which seems so obvious after the fact, but the space where I'm working doesn't have a corner like that. That's like open. We have bookshelves in the corners and stuff where those corners of the walls are not available for art making. So, yeah. It was great to see. You can see some of the textile sculptures here that I'll show in another video. But it was great to have their like intervention into the piece of like, no, actually you can just use these L-shaped pieces in a regular wall corner. So yeah, I drove everything down to the Mission. I just hand deliver all of my art at the moment, and it was nice to be able to just show up with a car full of objects. So yeah, that was my whole process, from sketch to failure to trying again to success to gallery. And yeah, I hope you try improvisation in your art practice, and don't always have to know where you're going or what you're making, and you'll still get there in the end. All right, bye.